Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. So, I welcome you to the last session of the day. In this session, Dr. D. Mohanto will give his lecture. Dr. Mohanto obtained his master's in physics from Maharaja Purna Chandra College from Utkal University in 1994 and worked as UGC CSIR NET JRF in the Department of Physics, Utkal University for about a year prior to joining the Department of Physics, Tezpur University as a lecturer in 1998. He obtained PhD from Tezpur University in 2003 to 2004. After PhD, he availed Summer Teacher Fellowship and worked at PRL Ahmedabad in 2003 and at SN Bose Center, Kolkata in 2006. He received Boys Cast Fellowship from DST Serve, New Delhi during 2006-2007 and worked in the University of Wisconsin-Madison, USA. He was also awarded with Indo-US Research Fellowship during 2011-2012 to work in the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, Harvard University, USA. He has published about 150 peer-reviewed papers, conference proceedings, and book chapters. Till date, he has supervised 12 doctoral and many master's theses. He is a life member of MRSI, IPA, IPS, OPS, and a regular member of APS, MRS, OSA, and OSI. He has visited INFN Italy 2003, National University of Singapore 2009, and Aristotle University in Greece 2011. His current research interests includes optoelectronic features of nanoscale semiconductors and rare earth oxides, 2D materials, radiation-induced phenomena, nanobiointerface, and soft matter physics. I welcome you, sir. Please take over the charge.
Thank you very much. Let me thank Professor Arshad Hussain, who is a very good friend of mine. I visited 1 decade ago, probably, to Tripura University, and there is a confusion that when we write TU, Tezpur University or Tripura University, here also we write TU. Okay, so TU, talking for TU, and it's a pleasure to give a talk on 2D materials or flat materials or layered materials in this FDP meeting. So I express my heartfelt thanks to the organizers because I am aware that they are organizing this type of events quite regularly. And on the very first day I was there, and after that, because of some clash with another international conference which is going on at IUSC, so it is difficult to attend all the programs, and so sorry for that, Arshad sir. And now I'll come to my talk. Can you please tell me whether it is visible or not?
Not yet, sir. Now it is coming.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll be speaking today on nano-dimensional 2D systems.
Sir.
Properties. Yes.
Yes, sir. You can hide that bar. You can just put it on hide. Okay. Take your cursor to the hide and yes. Right. Nice.
Thank you so much. So property, challenges, and future scope. when I looked at the schedule, I found lot of aspects being covered in this FDP program, starting from graphene or graphite-like systems to different materials, and also devices, as I could see from Dr. Hemen Kolita. So what I thought that today in this discussion, I would like to highlight some of the interesting properties and challenges before us. It should have been like properties, scope, and challenges. I kept it like this: challenges and future scope, because what is the possibility before us? What would be the possibility? So I have kept my talk in this way. There will be two parts. One will be like 2D layered systems, which are artificially grown or man-made systems. What we are doing here, what others have also inspired us to do. Types and features, conventional and unconventional types, then exfoliation and Raman signature, because this will give testimony to whether you have layered structure or not. Then probing excitons and tryons. So excitons are, you know, that weakly coupled electron hole pairs, whereas tryons are, you have electron hole which has captured another electron or a hole. Accordingly, you can say this as charged exciton or EEH or EHH. And then impact of radiation induced phenomena, where I'll consider charge particle accelerator, using accelerator, how we have modified some of the properties. And similarly, you can also consider gamma radiation as well as beta radiation, and the interplay of defects. So this will be the first part. The second part, which actually spans from macroscopic system to nanoscale system. These are also 2D systems which are naturally occurring, not man-made. It means we'll look into some biological systems which are already available in nature. Types and features. And I cannot cover in this talk all the examples, but few of the examples I would like to consider: insects, avians, or animals, or plant system. Then wettability and coloration property, scope and challenges, and finally conclusions. So progress of technology, if we look back to 19th century, where chemical age started, people started reacting chemical A with chemical B and obtain C. Okay. Sometimes people say that that X plus Z equal to Y. Don't say why, but people took time to understand what kind of reaction is going on, why there is color change, why there is a separate product, how particles grow. Okay, it took long time. All the reactions we are observed in 19th century. From that onwards, we started observing, and we rely on that. 20th century, as you know, the nuclear age, plastic age, and then slowly, even if you know one center which was nuclear science center, because of dominant work, predominantly high amount of work with respect to materials, it has been changed to inter-university accelerator centers. Okay. So similarly, biotechnology age, and 21st century, which is the century we live in, and also in future, nanotechnology will take the lead. Even I came across one word also, which is called picotechnology, because people are saying that when we have some ailments, we have some diseases, we have some sick cells, we require some medicine. So these medicines can be replaced by some technology, some nano robots, etc., which can cure, not only cure, but also make cells healthy. So future technology people are thinking about quantum teleportation, quantum cryptography, quantum information sharing, etc. But that will be realized through advancement in nanotechnology. So what we can build tomorrow depends on what we know today. So as a result of which 21st century is a very, we are very hopeful about this and we are looking forward to it. So coming to layered materials, there is a misnomer with the words layered and 2D systems. So I would like to mention 4 important points here. Class of materials that grows in layered fashion. All flat surfaces need to exist in layered form. So flat surfaces may exist in isolated form or in layered form. In layered form, when they exist, we say stack of layers. So layered systems appear in the form of stacks and 2D systems required to be flat surfaces. Okay. Now, if we look into nature, then you find like plant leaves. All of us know that large surface area enhances photosynthesis activity. That's why these are very much flat. Similarly, bird's wing, because aerodynamic principle is to follow, so therefore they have large surface area. Now, common examples, if you see the macroscopic world, flat surfaces, then you have blackboard, tabletop, page, screen, window pane, painting, clothes even. So it means that we are practicing this even when we did not realize about its purpose or the physics behind it. Now, materials in layered form, for example, graphite and its derivatives, I think that in this FDP program, lot of talks were on this graphite subject as well as its derivative. Then transition metal dichalcogenides, which are also called as TMDC materials. Then boron nitride hexagonal B3 and 4. You have phosphorine, which is black phosphorus. Plumbine is about layered lead, and also few metal oxide systems. This can fall into unconventional types. Now applications also, you know that optoelectronic to photovoltaic devices. In optoelectronic, when you say, you can talk about LEDs or lasing actions, where in IV plot, it is the first quadrant which is interesting for optoelectronic devices, I mean LED and lasers, lasing application. But for detection purpose, you require third quadrant where your material can be useful for that. Photovoltaic is when you are not applying anything, you are not applying voltage, but your material will behave as if it is a battery. Then in that case, photovoltaic. Similarly, gas sensing and gas storage, because we are looking for clean energy, for example, hydrogen energy. So you require a material where hydrogen should not react chemically, but through van der Waals bond, it can stay. And gas sensing, like toxic gases, hazardous gases, nitrous oxide, and H2S, even acetone sensing, people talk about it. And another interesting feature is solid lubricants. We know that most of our energy is lost because of friction, and we are well aware of the liquid lubricants or fluid lubricants. So where you have a carrier fluid and you have certain material so that it becomes viscous, neither pure liquid nor a solid. But solid lubricants means it is purely solid but because of its layered structure, if you give some normal stress, then there will be slippery action. So one layer can slip over other. And all of us know that for solid lubricants, you have, for example, for friction, you have rolling friction, you have sliding friction, dynamic friction. So in this case, when a structure is layered one and also hollow one, then this kind of solid lubricants are very, very useful, and especially in space shuttle, etc. Then sensors starting from optical sensor to chemical sensors, as well as biological sensors, electrode material, and also bioimaging. Now layered systems, as it is shown here, you have stack of layers. For example, if I consider these gray spherical balls as W, then the yellow ones are sulfur. Okay, so this layer, so it's actually it's a tri-layer, but we consider it to be a single layer, unlike graphene, where you have honeycomb structure of carbon only, right? So this three layers is actually called as one layer. This is another layer, this is another layer, and they are separated by van der Waals bond. So in plane you have in plane bonding is very strong, and out of plane bonding is weak, which is van der Waals bond. So layered structures which actually appear in the form of layers like MOS2, WS2, TiS2, WSC2, SNS, HBN, GC3 and 4, which is called graphitic carbon nitride, and phosphorine. So these are put in conventional category because they actually exist with layers, stack of layers. Whereas unconventional means they actually do not exist in the layer fashion. But when you have seeds, multiple seeds, nano seeds, you can say, then they can also be used for application purposes. So CDS nanoseed, zinc selenide nanoseeds, zinc oxide nanoseeds, etc. Now, when you have stack of layers, and each of these layers, two layers, they are separated by van der Waals bonding. So they need to be exfoliated, or they need to peel off the surface. So for that purpose, what you can do, the commonly used method like liquid solvent assisted. The first one, like you can put this stack in water and go for sonication, simple sonication, you will find that some flakes will come out of it, of the surface. And better than water will be ethanol or methanol in alcoholic media. Mechanical exfoliation, peeling of the surface, or maybe you can have a plate, rotating plate, and you need to put beneath it, you need to put your sample, stack of layer material, and slowly you make it down, and surface will be taken out one by one. So this is very risky. I mean, for wide area layer materials, it is difficult to make. Sonication is a must, especially when you are considering liquid solvent assisted exfoliation. Now, another interesting thing which is coming up, and people are trying to practice it. Only problem is to separate these exfoliated sheets is biomolecular assisted exfoliation. For example, if you put a stacked material in collagen, then and leave it as it is, you do nothing, then slowly collagen will come and percolate through this spacing, breaking all these van der Waals bonds, and they will be separated from each other. But only thing is that how to purify it, how to remove the unwanted products. So that is an issue, but people are still following, and this is a new method, biomolecular assisted method. Now, radiation based is also a technique through which one can peel surface one layer from the other and make seeds. If a radiation is falling this way, then because of a gradient in stress, so this is going to come out of the rest of the stack. So stack of layers, so if you have a stack of layer, so this is a layered material, it could be graphite, it could be nitrides or TMDCs. So we need to have seeds, and it is very difficult, still it is very challenging to obtain monolayer seeds in TMDCs, that is a tri-layer seeds. What we end up with a few layer seeds actually. Even if you have few layers, they are also very good for certain applications, and these applications are mentioned in the right hand corner. So graphitic layered materials I will not discuss much, because a few talks I found that they have covered this aspect, graphitic layered materials, and this is our starting point in fact. And because graphene has zero band gap, so therefore for optoelectronic application there is an issue. So therefore people jumped into other layered materials and searched for other 2D materials. Now TMDCs, if you look at the periodic table, you find these materials like molybdenum and tungsten on cationic side, and on anionic side sulfur, selenium and tellurium. Molybdenum sulfide, molybdenum selenide, molybdenum telluride, or tungsten sulfide, tungsten selenide, tungsten telluride, all these materials are now focal, or you can say key materials as far as layered materials are concerned. Now here I will take not all examples, a few examples on which we have worked little, whatever we can. The WS2 material, it has got band gap 1.2 electron volt, which is indirect type band gap in bulk form. But when it comes to a monolayer form, it becomes direct, and the band gap enhancement also found, which is about 2.1 electron volt. For WSE2 system, it is 1.2 electron volt, and it can come up to 1.8 electron volt in case of monolayer form. So advantages over the graphene and graphitic systems are like this: non-zero band gap. It means they have a finite band gap, and this is highly tunable because it will be highly dependent on the layered number of layers. Large scale production, one can have mass production using these materials, and strong broad luminescence. So there are few reports we have put here on the right hand side. This you can give a look if you are interested in a particular property. So these are very good references. Like optoelectronic devices, look at this paper. Photovoltaic device, advanced material, this paper. There are many papers. I have selected a few where the description is very much clear, and if you have interest in a particular topic or particular application, then we can follow this. And from optoelectronic devices to bioimaging. Okay, this is a simple procedure for obtaining nano WS2 system. Out of many systems, one or two systems I would show, and I will focus on the properties, more into properties. So like as you do in a chemistry lab, start with thiourea, then sodium tungstate, and in acidified ammonia solution, stir up to maintain pH, and then take this precursor into autoclave. You know, autoclave is a process, is a system in which we allow reaction in controlled environment. Then repeated centrifugation, washing, dry, you collect a powder, you make it, let us say S1, okay, and then add thiourea and water, repeat this process, subjected to hydrothermal treatment about 200 degrees centigrade for 36 hours or so, and followed by these processes. So we obtain another powder. So in this case, we see W and S elemental detection. As you know, EDX is called as energy dispersive X-ray analysis, in which we first verify whether these elements are present or not. And left hand side is about XRD pattern through which we determine the crystal structure. So to our surprise, not only nanoparticles we obtain, but what we obtain actually are these are fullerene-like structures. It took several months to verify that these are actually inorganic fullerene type structures. All of us are aware of Buckminster fullerene, which is C60. All of us know that Richard Smalley, Harold Kroto, and Robert Karl, they were awarded Nobel Prize for this. Buckminster fullerene, C60, C70, C90, and so. In C60, you know, 20 hexagons and 12 pentagons. So those are carbon materials, right? But this is what we are saying is inorganic fullerene type WS2, and there is a lot of scope into this kind of structure, okay, and not fully known. So here, first scanning electron microscope, it shows like cauliflower-like structures, but under TEM, we found that these are actually cage-like structures having hollow cages inside. And the last part is the high resolution TEM picture. You could see that you have lattice fringes on the outer part, whereas inner part is empty. So we used these particular materials, which are called as inorganic fullerene type WS2 materials, for a material while targeting malachite green. So malachite green is a pollutant, and you know, this is being used for preserving sea animals, seafoods in fact, and there is a environmental it is very hazardous, and people would like to degrade this particular material while they are available in excess. So what is interesting here, because photocatalysis is a study, you know, that we excite electrons from the valence band to the conduction band, and in that process redox reaction will take place, and generally we apply first order kinetics and see how much degradation has taken place. So in case of this particular material, what we found is that not UV, but under daylight condition, under visible light illumination, the degradation was faster. So that is what I wanted to show here, because otherwise photocatalysis is a very simple activity, and photocatalysis and photoluminescence, these are two opposite features of nanoparticles, all of us know. So A side, you see here 613 or so is the peak absorbance peak of malachite green, and this reduces up, the absorption value reduces with time in presence of our photocatalyst, which is inorganic fullerene type WS2. The right hand side is under daylight illumination. So there we find that there is a drastic reduction. So this has been shown here in the panel below, figure C. The percentage of degradation, as you could see, in case of UV light, it is slowly increasing percentage of degradation. But in case of visible light, it was very fast. And at 20%, it goes up to 69%, and up to 2 hours or so, it goes up to 70 to 73%. These are the rate constants calculated for different materials. So this is a comparative study, and this is a paper by our group. We have compared here, and these references are you can find in this particular paper. So a comparison between photocatalytic performance of different nanophotoCatalysts by other groups as well as our group on different targets, on different pollutants like rhodamine B, methyl orange, Congo red, malachite green, etc., etc. So here you see illumination source. In some cases they have taken UV light. So when you take UV light, rhodamine B, in this case it is after 50 minutes you see 100% degradation, means clear solution you get. And this is TiO2 MOS2 in zeolite. It took 1 hour up to 95%, but this is methyl orange again. Methyl orange will have peak on the other side, not 613. So UV light, again methyl orange, 100 minutes. So one can actually compare. So what I could see, the mesoporous WS2 nanoseeds on rhodamine B up to 10 minutes, but again the performance is very low, which is about 21%. So keeping in mind all this literature survey, we found that this Mg was rarely discussed in the literature, and we found that the visible light, under visible light, this inorganic fullerene type nanocatalyst, if we have, we can degrade it quite efficiently. Now I'll come to material modification through radiation exposure, because we know that we are created because of radiation, and the whole universe is sustaining because of radiation. So materials also we cannot leave. We need to know what is happening in presence of radiation in a particular material, and how these materials can sustain and work under radiation environment. So with that purpose, we have different kind of radiation, like one is ion irradiation, where we use charged particles for irradiation, and you have gamma photon irradiation. These are electromagnetic waves, but very high frequency, 10 to the power 17 hertz or so. Then you have beta irradiation with weak decay coming from cesium source. And for ion irradiation, these are some of the papers you could see. If you want, you can also keep a note of it. Ion implantation means if you want to put some material, if you want to put some dopants into some layered materials to improve electronic properties. In the second case, Yazbev et al., defect induced magnetism. If you want magnetism in a substance without incorporating iron, cobalt, nickel, and because of defects you can generate magnetism. So this is another report. You have mechanical properties can also be improved because of radiation. You have ripple formation in angle dependent studies. One can form number of ripples, and these ripples can act as diffraction grating for certain applications. Then this is a recent paper by our group. It is about diamond-like carbon formation from graphitic carbon. So this graphitic carbon is nothing but we just simply took one pencil, HB pencil. Of course, it was 6B pencil, and it was irradiated. Angle-dependent irradiation was considered. In that case, we found that the diamond-like carbon can be formed. Similarly, you have columnar-like defects, left-hand side. The right-hand side, you have point defect creation. When we say defects, defects include point defects. Point defects, all of us know that missing atoms or lattice vacancies, whereas other type of defects can be columnar-like defects, like you are forming an amorphized structure within a material. Then you have rheological properties, improved rheological properties, improved mechanical properties of some fluids, magneto-optical properties. So this includes layered materials as well as non-layered materials also, because here I am concentrating on radiation exposure, what people have done. Similarly, some relevant works related to layered systems considering radiation, which are very, very less. If you search in Google, you will find less number of works. Previously, what I have shown is non-layered systems and also layered systems. So most of the radiation assisted works you will find in unconventional type systems where layers do not exist. Now WS2 flex PL quenching was found, photoluminescence quenching, because of focused ion beam irradiation, gallium ion irradiation 30 keV. So it has been published here by Bojei group. Then you have similarly compositional change of WS2 surface by Ne plus, Ar plus and krypton irradiation, that is neon, argon and krypton irradiation, from energy range changing from 100 electron volt to 1.5 keV. Now tribological properties, because tribological properties, as I mentioned before, sliding measurement, or layers would like to slide over one another, and it has application as solid lubricant. So tribological properties are important to investigate. So sliding life enhancement was found because of ion beam mixing. Ion beam mixing means first RF sputtering followed by ion implantation. Now another material, TMDC, MOS2 and WS2, molybdenum sulfide and tungsten sulfide, using focused ion beam. So in this case, single atom defect engineering was possible, as suggested by the author. Similarly, WSE2 can lead to WOX. OX means when the composition is unpredictable. It could be 2, 3, 4, so changing. And this is because of the presence of defects. And selenium deficient WSE2. Then convergent ion beam alteration of 2D materials. So this is a very good article and very, very recent article. One can give a look. Alteration of 2D materials and metal 2D interfaces. So improvement of mechanical properties in defective MOSE2 was reported by these particular groups in scientific reports. You could see that there is a drastic improvement in Young's modulus. So you could see this red one is at higher dose, having fluence 1 into 10 to the power 15 ions per centimeter square, and this is 10 to the power 14 ions per centimeter square. So when this material MOSE2 is irradiated with helium, +1 helium with energy 30 keV, then one can increase Young's modulus. So toughness increases because of the presence of defects. Now similarly, in another work, in nanoscale WS2, photoluminescence quenching was found beyond a critical fluence. So the left hand side is Raman spectra. You know, in case of WS2, you have two modes. One is E2G1, which is in plane mode, and another is A1G mode, which is out of plane mode. And if you have exfoliated sample, if you are going from a stack of layers to a few layers, in that case, this particular peak is going to be suppressed as compared to A1, which is out of plane one. Okay. So when you have exfoliated layers, this peak is going to be dominant over this. So in this particular case, because of irradiation, you see there is a drastic change over here, along with a new peak, new evolution in this particular region. So these authors, they have ascribed this to amorphization of certain material. Amorphization means localized disorderedness has been introduced into the material. Now, impact of gamma photons on nanoscale WS2, this was by our group. So first we have exfoliated these WS2 materials, and then we found that the introduction of defects, and these defects have been analyzed by considering these lattice fringes and plotting gray value against distance. So one can find that in this particular case they are more or less same, but in this case there is a dip inside. So we believe that there could be defects in this case, and these defects, of course, through TM you cannot say that this is sulfur defect or W defect, but after EDX calculations or elemental detection analysis, you could see that there is a drop in sulfur percentage. So from that we can say that yes, sulfur, absence of sulfur or deficient, the sample is deficient in sulfur. So in fact, we have studied gamma radiation considering different radiation doses, G1, G2, G3, G4, as it is mentioned here. So G0 is kept as reference, which is pristine. Then G1 12 kilogray, then 34 kilogray, 48 kilogray, up to 96 kilogray. Now, the optoelectronic features or optoelectronic properties, what we have investigated in this particular work is that, first of all, when you excite these samples, all these 4 samples, unirradiated and irradiated samples, gamma irradiated samples, you see that there is a manifestation in the spectra. The first peak we assign to near bandage emission or simple excitonic luminescence, which is around 610 or so. The second one we ascribe to trionic peak. So trionic peak is EHH or EEH. In this case, we believe that it is EHH. And along with these two, in addition to these 2 peaks, when there is an asymmetry in the peak, in the spectra, you believe that there is possibility of another peak. Okay. Otherwise, it will be very, very symmetric. Then the origin will be only one, that is excitonic luminescence. But in this case, we are seeing that yes, there is a modulation over here, manifestation in this particular peak. And apart from these 2 peaks, you are getting another peak which is around 680, which is located at 680 nanometer. And this is because of these defects, what we are saying is due to sulfur vacancies. Okay, so these 3 positions are very, very important. And we found that after analyzing this area wise, we found that the exciton to trion conversion is possible in this particular system because of gamma irradiation. And then we have considered TRPL measurements, which is called as time resolved photoluminescence, done at UGC DI Consortium, Kolkata. So there we found that in case of unirradiated sample, you see that looks like emission intensity quenches very fast, but after incorporation of defects, after incorporation of trions or conversion of excitons to trions, they are now delayed. It means going towards phosphorescence behavior, not phosphorescence, because it is still in nanosecond region. Unless until we go millisecond to seconds or so, we cannot say phosphorescent, but it is delayed emission, you can say. So we have bi-exponential decay response of individual peaks where both first and slow parameters. So first parameters is direct radiative recombination between conduction band electron and hole present in the valence band. So this is fast emission. And if it is coming through some trapping sites, then we say these are slow parameters. So both are actually increasing. However, quantum yield remains almost constant. It's not changed much. In case of only G2, we found that around 80%. And there is no significant changes in these cases. in case of quantum yield. Now, impact of gamma photons on nanoscale WS2. So these are Raman spectra. You know, the first one is called as E2G1 mode, which is in plane mode. The second one is A1G mode. A1G mode. You have also one second overtone of LA mode, longitudinal acoustic mode, what people have reported, and that is just close to the in plane mode, 2LA mode. So there is a manipulation or manifestation of these modes, mode intensity that we have measured for different irradiated sample, and accordingly we have calculated the phonon lifetime considering this uncertainty relation delta E by h bar, which is equal to 1 by tau pH equal to 2 pi c gamma. Gamma is full width. So for different phonons like A1G, then you have E2G1 and 2LA and defect. So in logarithmic scale, semi-log scale with gamma dose, we have plotted for all the samples, and we found that except defect, in all the cases it is going down. Now, impact of beta particles on TMDC nanosheets. TMDC nanosheets means, again we'll emphasize only WS2 and WSC2 systems. In this case, F0, F1, F2, F3, all these are for WSC2 systems, H0, H1, H2, H3 for WSC2 systems. And this was a very simple experiment that you have beta source in an MSc lab. So we have irradiated, we have exposed our sample for some days and calculated the dose, and after that measurement was done using two probe contact using 2400 source meter of Keithley. So before that we need to check whether your sample is homogeneous or not. For different contact points we have checked, and we found it is quite good, and after that we went for experiment. Okay, so in case of WSC2 sample, you see for F0, F1, F2 samples, all are showing rectifying nature. So it means it is like metal semiconductor junction or Schottky junction. However, in case of F3 sample, it was very surprising for us. In this case, we did not get rectifying nature, and we have tried again and again, measured many times for this particular sample, which was irradiated with high dose. So this was showing like metallic character. IV was like simple straight line. However, in case of WS2, all we are still showing rectifying behavior. What we did, why it is so? We thought probably this is after irradiation, this WSC2 is going towards semi-metallic response. So semi-metallic response means there should be an overlapping of valence band and conduction band. So considering that beta irradiation, high dose beta irradiation can remove some of the chalcogen vacancies, selenium atoms. So therefore now it is no more WSC2, but WSC 1.5, 1.6, etc. So in that regard, we have calculated, we have in fact considered DFT calculations and found that the first upper panel for WSC2 system, it is indeed when sulfur vacancies are more, in that case there is a overlapping of top of the valence band and bottom of the conduction band. So that is why probably it is not showing rectifying contact. In other cases it was semiconducting. It means we could see that in this particular work we have mentioned this thing that actually there can be a possibility of converting semiconducting material to semi-metallic behavior. So some of the equations we have used and measured different parameters using thermionic emissions, etc. Now observations in irradiation based studies by others and ours, starting from proton beam to uranium to gamma photon, carbon beam, electron, beta, gallium and oxygen. You could see a lot of changes, a lot of interesting properties. For example, in one case, vacancies and interstitial generation, then surface desorption in case of graphene, then conductivity gain at low fluence in case of graphene MOS2, then exciton to trion conversion, which was very interesting. In fact, we have referees were very much appreciating this particular work because of excitons to trion conversion. And in fact, one day it is possible probably that we can have 2 terminal or 3 terminal devices, not where electron transport can be replaced by trion transport, which are actually charged excitons. In fact, when we write exciton means these are neutral exciton. EH will act as a boson single entity, whereas trion, again it is a charged particle, it will EHH or EEH. So enhancement in electrical conductivity in this case, evolution of metallic semi-metallic behavior, as I have mentioned. People have also reported this type of behavior in MOSC2 system, then photoluminescence quenching and band gap manifestation. So in another study, we would like to show that unconventional systems can also be considered as ideal materials for exploration. Formation of nano-titania powder through sol-gel route. So nano-titania, you know, one point of time, nano-titania was considered by majority class of researchers because nano-titania itself is environmentally non-toxic and very good. So it can come to our food cycle, and also it is very useful in case of formulation of drugs, etc. medicine. Now formation of nano-titania powder is very easy, and you know there are 3 phases: anatase, brookite and rutile phase. Anatase is very important, and here what we used is microwave irradiation for coalescence, and we obtained seeds through exfoliation principle, and then after obtaining exfoliated seeds, it was subjected to gold irradiation, thinking that we can have something like plasmonic response also in this particular material. So this is a cartoon as it is showed that you have some nanoparticles which are seed materials. Because of microwave heating, they are aggregated. After aggregation, you exfoliate them and you obtain titanium nanoseeds. And this is schematic representation. So look at here the first panel, upper panel. In that case, you have some seeds, seed-like structures, and these are not layered structures. Remember that these are seeds, and these seeds after irradiation G1 and G4, because these are TM images, and we found some kind of spherical balls. Means these seeds might have assembled under irradiation and form some hollow spongy structures, which we have analyzed later. So you have nano seeds and you have gold ion beams. So you incorporate or decorate gold ions into the system, as well as these systems will crumple and come together and they grow in size, forming some spongy structures like this. Under TM, we could see very much spongy structures we could see, or we can say microspheres. So these seeds can be grown into microspheres, it means. So it's a reverse effect in this case we found, because most of the time radiation assisted particle growth can be observed, but here a reverse kind of effect we found. Some microspheres are generated from nanosheets under radiation. And in this case, this is a schematic. Top 1A is showing a schematic, a cartoon. We have sliced this part. This was aluminum sheet on which titanium nanosheets were there, and this was cut. This section was cut and transferred. Then it was flipped, and since gold was implanted, so the implantation of atoms, all of us know that it follows a Gaussian trend. And since we cannot measure, this sample was very small, so we cannot measure every millimeter or so, but 2-3 cases we have taken, 3-4 sites we have taken, and we tried to measure the percentage of gold in those regions using EDX, here, here, here. And we found that it is following this trend. So with higher dose, there is a growth. In the EDX also you could see, in the first sample you do not have gold, very little. And then now this gold peak has improved up to this. So slowly it is increasing with radiation doses. On the top surface you will not get. You get after 26 nanometer or so, which was actually the projectile range at which you get maximum number of gold atoms. So 0 means actually surface. Then 0.5 centimeter probe distance over this, because total sample was 1 centimeter. All right, so these samples were measured for wettability purposes. We found that there is a drastic change from hydrophilic to hydrophobic behavior. As you could see, left, right, we have measured contact angles, and then mean degrees you could see, because of ion implantation, the surface has also become hydrophobic. So there is a transition from hydrophilicity to hydrophobic surface. So this is a digital snapshot of G3 sample, and G4 sample actually we could not hold the drop. It just rolled away, rolled off the surface at G4 sample. So these are the challenges and some future scope, that some articles have been shown that, in some articles it was shown that bubble formation in between the layers can lead to exfoliation. So low energy proton or alpha particle irradiation. So this is under study actually, and we are going to investigate this particular work. Then secondly, WSC, WC is a super hard material. So if in a layered material you can form isolated clusters WC, then that will be very useful, and not only it will be flexible, but also it will be tough. So this WSC phase formation in tungsten chalcogenide materials, WS2 and WSC2, is a possibility using this. Then similarly, semiconducting to semi-metallic behavior is also another interesting area which people can try. And optical properties in layered materials due to exciton and plasmonic interaction because of incorporation of novel metals. So this is my first part, and for this one can actually refer to this particular work which is published in 2021, a review work on practices and scope of technologically relevant 2D materials, which I have not discussed in this talk. Can I know how much time I have? Arshad sir?
Yeah, You have another 20 minutes,
Okay,
4
very good.
o'clock.
Very nice. So the second part is 2D systems in nature. It will cover soft matter, biophysics, evolution, biophotonics, bio-inspired processes. So in this particular talk part, some of the interesting examples from nature I would like to refer. The starting point could be like the eye pattern of peacock feather. Peacock feather is spectacularly attractive, all of us we know, and this color is not only beautiful, but contrast wise also it is very much attractive. And if you see, it has got 3 prime colors in the eye pattern. So the core is called as eye pattern, the blue, green and brown barbules. So here comes physics, that you have semiconductors. In case of semiconductors, when you say electronic crystals, you have valence band and conduction band. So they are separated by a band gap. And if you plot EK space or omega K space, you will find that you have acoustic mode and then you have optical mode, etc., etc. In case of a photonic crystal where regularly arranged metallic dielectric material, in that particular case, when you have a gap of 200 nanometer or so, what you see is that this band gap manifestation takes place and you get just straight response. So these are not carved because electron has mass, you know, so that's why you get, if you remember, diatomic lattice vibration or monoatomic lattice vibration, dispersion relation, omega is directly proportional to 1 by root over n. So because of that, there will be kinks here. But in case of photon, you have rest mass is 0, so this will be very much straight. So dispersion relation is like that, omega equal to ck, all of us know. But in this particular example, the eye pattern of peacock feather, this is also a flat surface, and we would like to say a 2D surface, but this 2D is unusual entity, I would say, because here quantum confinement effect, we need to see deep into the tissues, okay. But otherwise, these are macroscopically 2D materials. These are flat objects, and also they grow in layered fashions. So you see here in the eye pattern, you have the central region, which is called as eye pattern. Then you have barbs, yeah, and finer things are called as barbules. You have narrow brown stem, loose barbs, white stems. Okay. So this is an interesting article. One can see this article. So you have 3 regions. For 3 different, distinctly different regions, you have different reflectance spectra, you could see here. And these are actually photonic structures. Let me tell you. You have actually melanin rods, let me say. Yes, these rods are hexagonally arranged, and these are coated with keratin. So melanin rods coated with keratin is basically responsible for this bright coloration feature, and this color of this eye pattern will depend on the lattice spacing or the periodicity. Okay, so since it is keratin only, so in the keratin surface you have COOH, etc., etc. So what we did following this article, also we have also tried, they are subjected to zinc solution, and they are subjected to exchange interaction, so that you can grow particles or nano zinc oxide on this particular melanin rods. So this reflectance spectra You could see here, this is original feather, and you have modified spectra because of zinc oxide loading. So you have stop bands and stop bands of the photonic crystal. Stop band, we are saying that in a crystal like this, you have a band gap. So in case of photonic crystal, we say this is a stop band, okay? So in the reflectance spectra, you are going to see. So this will be the stop band. So it is, this particular sample was collected from Manas National Park. It was like 10 years ago. We worked on this particular material. And here you see this cyan color, blue color, cyan color, and yellow color. You have three different colors. And same image shows very good barbs and barbules. You could see that these are holes, porous structures. And these are now decorated with zinc oxide materials. So these zinc oxide nanospheres, as I said, because the top layer was keratin, so these keratin layers, they have interacted with zinc 2 plus and they form some sphere-like structures. You could see, and this is from cross-sectional view, you could see nicely decorated nanospheres of zinc oxide on keratin surface. So these are very interesting aspect that we can look at, because the materials are already available in nature and we can manifest with little technique so that we can obtain very nice pictures and modify the properties. So we have three different barbules in the central region, in the key region, which is blue barbules. The second one is cyan barbules. Third is brown barbules, and before embedding and after embedding. So look at the first one, which is the blue barbule, the blue color one. So without zinc oxide loading, you could see here around 460 or so, you have a peak, and then it drops and goes like this. So after zinc oxide loading, so there is a shift from this position to this position, which is now 545 after zinc oxide loading. Now for B, you have cyan, which is the cyan color, which is around 485 or so. Then it has also shifted to 560 nanometer. Finally, brown or yellow color, yellow brown color, you could see here there is a Etalon kind of thing, Fabry-Perot Etalon kind of thing. You have two stop bands, in fact. One is here, one is here. Now, after zinc oxide loading, this has gone. Now, the reason behind this brown coloration is that this brown is not giving you a square lattice. In other two cases, you have square lattice. In case of blue, you have square lattice, having lattice constant 140 nanometer or so. For cyan also 145 nanometer. But in case of brown, you have two lattice parameters. One is 150, another is in perpendicular direction, it is 185. So it's not rectangular. So therefore, you have now two reflectance peak maxima. One is 450, another is 600 or so. So the refractive index, modified refractive index, we are calculated before embedding and after embedding. So after embedding, you see there is a change, because now lambda is falling and you are getting lambda 1 in this case before embedding, and after embedment it will be lambda 2, it cannot be lambda 1. Know that these nanoparticles which are grown, they are grown on the top surface, they have not been infiltrated into the system, otherwise the system will be damaged. So we are keeping the system as it is, only on the keratin layer these nanoparticles have been grown. So it is going from 1.68 to 1.95. In this case, cyan case 1.67 to 1.91, and in this case up to 1.89. So the formula has been used like this: refractive index, modified refractive index is equal to lambda 2 by lambda 1 into the previous refractive index. And accordingly, the filling factor also we considered for melanin rods, air gaps, and keratin layer, because the total space was filled by these three materials. Melanin rods, you have melanin rods which exist, and they are separated by air gaps and keratin. So that is why whole thing will be equal to 1. So with this formulation, one can obtain these values. Okay, so we have also taken photoluminescence spectra, because you know zinc oxide gives you very good photoluminescence in the UV region, and it is very useful as far as lacing action is concerned and also upconversion is concerned. Now, when zinc oxide possesses numerous defects like lattice vacancies, antisites, and you have VO plus defects, doubly ionized vacancies, oxygen vacancies, then zinc sitting in oxygen position, oxygen sitting in zinc position, then you get multiple peaks. So it's a defective system actually, and this is zinc oxide, simple zinc oxide. The red one being the spectra for the I pattern. Now in this case, after loading we found that there is a change in the spectra, but these positions were also intact, they remained. So it means zinc oxide are actually present on this organic stuff which is I pattern, and zinc oxide is indeed loaded on the feeder. Now another interesting example is butterfly from insect kingdom. You know this moth or butterfly which are very much available all around us, and they have structure like this, and these are called ridges, and these are filaments. These are very much chitin in nature. So these are chitin stuff or chitinous filaments, and they have pores. Okay. Now in this particular system we thought of, because already it is a photonic system, because you have alternate structures, but in case of photonic system generally we consider it has to be metallic, then alternate system, alternate dielectric materials can form a photonic system, especially semiconducting system, then air gap, then semiconducting system, then air gap. In case of plasmonic system, you have metallic system, then you have air gap, metallic system, air gap, like that. So here we wanted to combine this, trying to make a hybrid system, because already we have COOH group on the surface. So what we did is we considered a technique in which we have infiltrated silver in presence of formic acid. So first ammonia treatment, because already in the sample you have COOH, then in ammonia, with ammonia it forms COOA, COO minus NH4 plus. Then processing with silver media. Now there will be replacement of NH4 plus by silver. So you get COOAg. And after treatment with formaldehyde, you can get this silver infiltration. So in this particular case, initially we have started with the white one, white butterfly. Then later we thought of working in multicolor, multivariant, starting from black, which is absolutely black, then little green, or you can say weakly green, and another one is multicolor. So same micrograph, you could see the left hand side, extreme left, you have black butterfly, green butterfly, then colored butterfly. So their structures you could see very much different. In the first case, it is highly disordered. The pores are of different sizes. in case of black, and that is why probably random scattering of light makes this black to appear black. In the green case, you have periodically arranged chitin surfaces having pores separated by ridges and cross ribs. In case of colored one, you could see that there are ridges, you have ribs and cross ribs, and also some thorn-like structures or some edge-like structures in between. So after infiltration with ammonia followed by silver and then formaldehyde, we could see that there is a change in the pores and also a swelling behavior. In the second case, particularly in the green case, you could see there are some globular-like structures, and these are called as beads, and these beads have emerged out of this. Because of these treatments, now they are now swollen. So silver is staying somewhere, and we cannot measure the presence of silver everywhere. What we have considered is the central point of each ridge we have measured the percentage of silver. And this is EDX spectra, right hand side. You could see 0 hours you do not have any silver, and slowly silver is coming and amount of silver is increasing, and after 20 hours of soaking we could see that silver is now prominent. So system is still intact, you could see after 16 hours or 20 hours also. And but of course up to 2 days one cannot go, it's not recommended, because these are very delicate stuff, very delicate, and sample handling is the most difficult part. We did polarization dependent reflectance features for these samples, and we found that in different regions they are distinctly different. For example, in the UV region, in the first case, in the black case, you could see for 0 degree polarization, 45 and 90 degree, S plane, P plane, and in between S and P, while 500, between 500 and 650, they are very, very close. In case of green, however, they are widely separated in this region between 500 and 650. And in this multicolor case, they are equi-spaced kind of. So these three contrast butterflies were considered: Papilio Cattospila prians, and Ganesha, Vanessa Gatui. So these three were distinct because they are very much distinct as far as coloration is concerned. So we thought of working in making plasmonic photonic hybrid structure, and to some extent we are successful. Now another interesting example I would like to share with you is about dragonfly and damselfly. These are also flat surfaces and 2D surfaces, you know. So in the first case it is dragonfly, and here also there is a contrast between these two. You know, these particular species, they, even if they have legs, but they cannot walk. And not only that, the first kind of dragonfly, they, when they sit, they need to make their wings flat, whereas river damselfly, while they sit, yes, on a plant, you will find that they are always closed. So there is a basic difference in their structure as far as flying pattern is concerned. So we thought of investigating very little about their wing structures. Okay. So these wing structures, we found that in the first case you have structures like you have pentagonal structures, then you have hexagonal structures of different dimensions. In the other case, in the reverse damselfly, we found these are very much closed structures, And in the most cases, these are very much square type patterns. Then we also did some calculation on wettability using some theoretical model. You know Wengel law.
And Dr. Mohanto, sir,
Yes.
sir, 5 minutes
Yes.
left, sir. 5 minutes are there.
5 minutes now. So I'll wind up with this. Yeah. So you have Wengel law. All of us know that cos theta W equal to R phi cos theta, and Casey-Baxter is cos theta C equal to phi 1 plus cos theta minus 1. So the interesting thing is that in Wengel case, you do not see phi. So phi is called as solid water fraction. In case of Casey-Baxter, we do not see R phi. R phi is called the roughness factor. So the wettability of these particular samples now, wettability of these particular samples, which are generally hydrophobic in nature. So we use some model to calculate this delta theta value. And then delta theta value, we found that it is coming in this way after Taylor's expansion and little calculation. So R phi value can be correlated with phi through this equation, and for these two samples, we have found that they are following like this. In case of dragonfly, this, so phi is solid water fraction, R phi is roughness factor. So at 3 positions we have measured. One is basal, central, and distal. So these are R phi values and these are phi values. Phi means solid water fraction and this is R phi. And this is about their reflectance pattern. So reflectance pattern is modified basal part, distal part, and edge part. One is for dragonfly, another is for damselfly. And we say that this is happening because of two things. One is surface scattering, another is subsurface volume scattering. It is happening because of their pockets, micro pockets available. So I would like to skip the other plant kingdom. I hope I have communicated some of the aspects, but let me show you this slide that you require. This slide, in fact, sample preparation for microscopy. So what kind of specimen you have? If you have biological specimen or samples available from nature, so they are highly non-conductive, so therefore they need to be, there should be coating on the surface to avoid charging effect. And these are the procedures for different samples, like non-biological sample and biological sample. The procedure has to be different, they cannot be same. So starting from sample preparation to sample curing to mounting and to imaging, it requires time and proper management of time and energy. So this will be my conclusion for today's talk. The transformation of titanium nanosheets to microspheres can be seen under irradiation. Then inorganic fullerene type WS2 nanosheets can have a better photocatalytic activity even under daylight illumination. And then butterfly dragonfly wing can give you a platform where we can interrelate photonic as well as wetting dewetting properties. So bifunctional properties are the future science. Bifunctional means you require wetting dewetting properties as well as anti-reflection properties. You require photoluminescence properties as well as photocatalytic properties, which at present we believe that these are opposite effects. Similarly, reflectance response is the sum total of appreciable surface scattering as well as subsurface volume scattering in case of the distal part, and both these contributions are substantially higher. The naturally occurring surface patterns biotemplates can be explored further to unravel structure property relationship. Lastly, I would say that more investigation is needed to interrelate soft matter and hard condensed matter principles. So I would like like to acknowledge some projects and institutes like UGCDI CSR Kolkata Center, IUSC New Delhi, and instrumentation support we received from SEC Tezpur University, SEP NEHU, IUSC New Delhi, UGCDI CSR Kolkata, IIT Guwahati, NEIST, and all the students who worked in the project. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Mohanto. It was very nice, starting from very basic to how to start from simple preparation to you demonstrated very well the nanotechnology in nature. So it was very nice. So now we can have some questions if participants have any. So you can put your questions in the chat box. And so participants, please, if you have any questions, you can put in the chat box, or you can switch on your microphone and directly you can interact.
I think that any similarity between insects and plants, yes. So yes, so this is a subject which is very interesting, which is called as biophotonics. So biophotonics means we are looking into the color, and this color is not because of pigmentary action, but because of the structure. And the structure, you know, this is changing. In case of insect, the color is fixed to certain duration of time, but in case of plant, it changes. If you measure color in the morning and evening, they will be different. But that is also interesting. People are studying, and in that regard, I would say that like orchid or orchid, you say, there these kind of studies are very much limited or rarely found, where they have fixed colors.
So any further? So you.
Yes. So a question has come that whether we can go for practical use. Now, let me tell you that science means experimentation, observation, and inference, right? And when we say inference, always we look into application. Application means whether we can translate into device. All around us cannot be device. Sometimes we need to understand how these things are working. Okay, so basic science is also required, and application, I agree. So in soft matter physics, for example, from biology point of view, if we see that how these dragonflies, they are making their flights. So from that we can understand, okay, so this is the principle and now we can follow. Okay, so now we say that drone, then fighters and aeroplanes, so all are based on aerodynamic principles, in fact, is not it? So essentially we are trying to observe nature more and more, to investigate more and more for future applications, but applications is not all. Yes. Thank you so much.
So if participants have no more questions, then if you have any other queries, so you directly mail to sir in the Tezpur University website. You will be getting his all details, contact details. So I don't see any more question. Okay, sir. So there is no more question. So thank you very much, sir. So we are done here.
I also thank you very much from my side as well as from Tejpur Department of Physics, Tejpur University, and also Tejpur University.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for organizing and taking all the pain for the benefit of the upcoming researchers. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, sir. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Professor Mohanto. So you have given us time. So in near future also we will have in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you and bye-bye.
So tomorrow we'll have our last day. So all the participants are requested to join by 10:15 tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll be having 3 sessions. So please be there. Thank you.